All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of Roll or Die. Normally, I don't get the job of doing the intros anymore, but Kim has allowed me. So let's see if I can get through this. We have today a special guest, Eli Golub. He's an awesome guy. He's been around the Jiu Jitsu traps for a long time. He's a blue belt, and he has gone to the troubles for the Jiu Jitsu community of actually writing a book. We're going to talk about that today. Welcome, Eli.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That was a terrible introduction, Anton. Terrible. I'm glad to hear him again.
Okay.
Jesus.
Get some nuggets, Kim. I'm happy to have an alternate universe intro.
Actually, and I didn't say he trains out of immersion and
That's right.
a whole bunch of things, but that's okay. That's okay. We can roll
So
with all
shit, Anton. So shit. And you're the guy we had to schedule around.
Oh man. So what I might do, if that's okay, is I might share my screen because I've got your Amazon Kindle book here, and I'm just going to read out like the overview of the book. So hopefully I'm sharing the right screen here. Yep. So Old Guide Jiu-Jitsu for Humans Over 40, the Kindle edition. So this comprehensive guide on starting jiu-jitsu is the perfect resource for anyone looking to explore the benefits of this empowering combat sport. The author, an enthusiastic practitioner with valuable insights from personal experience, shares habits and best practices that can enhance your jiu-jitsu journey. This book is not focused on secret techniques, but instead emphasizes healthy practices that can increase enjoyment and minimize the risk of injury, allowing mature athletes to continue enjoying the sport well into their advancing years. With detailed instructions and personal anecdotes, this guide provides a wealth of information of the many benefits of jiu-jitsu, as well as the tools you need to develop your practice and unlock your full potential. The only way to learn jiu-jitsu is to keep showing up, and this book backs you up with the knowledge to make that possible. So what are you waiting for? Step onto the mat and start your journey to becoming a jiu-jitsu master. Awesome, man. I really liked reading that. That was fun.
And the secret in joke, of course, is that a master is a level of age that we compete at. It's not necessarily someone who's really awesome at something.
Mm-hmm.
I'm certainly testament to that. As long as I've been studying it, I think we all feel like we're beginners, no matter how deep into it we get. But
absolutely.
Yeah.
Kim, do you still feel like a beginner? Then you're a black belt.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, 100%. More than ever now. Actually, more than the other belts. When I got my black belt,
it just the water just keeps getting deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper.
Yeah, you realize how much you don't know.
Yeah, and it was that realization because we're not long out of I live in Melbourne, and we're not really that long out of those horrible lockdowns we had. And I got, halfway through that process. And I think everybody in this community was experiencing like, do we even ever get to do this again? Like we've discovered this amazing thing that I think everyone would agree there's like no downside if you're doing it right. Did I finally discover this thing that gives me great physical health? It gives me incredible mental clarity. I can, nothing really seems hard when you compare it to jiu-jitsu. So just the act of going a couple times a week and getting the absolute shit beat out of you often. There's nothing else in life that's as hard as that. And so I was really despairing in the lockdown that, I had finally found this thing that made my life awesome. Like everything else is kind of like, for me, it turned the volume down on almost every other aspect of my life. Nothing else was as important. And for probably a year after I started, or I should say after the first year after I started, because for that whole first year, all I did was just smoke everybody's ears about how awesome jiu-jitsu was. And they had to start and come with me to a class and look at this cool thing I just learned and all this stuff. And then all of a sudden that was gone completely from my life. I have mats at home. I was fortunate enough to get like 3 people maybe to sneaky agree to come up here. I live up in the hills, so it's kind of a drive from the city as well. And it just kind of seemed like that was never, it was so open-ended. Like there's no plan. Where do we go here for, next? And I just missed it so much. I got really nostalgic about when I started, and I really was just thinking about it all the time. And because I was thinking about it all the time, I was trying to remember what it was like when I started, so that when I started again, I wouldn't get caught, flat-footed. Because sometimes you get injuries, you stop training for a little while, and if you don't work on the rest of you while that part is healing, you go back and it's just like 10 times worse than it was when you started. And it takes you forever to get in. Everybody that practices jiu-jitsu knows that you can be in shape, but you're not in fighting shape. There's a big difference between having awesome cardio, being strong, being fit, blah, blah, blah. Once you get on the mat, it doesn't matter. You're not really ready. If you haven't been training, then you're not ready to train. And so I wanted to try and remember all of the stuff that I had to go through when I started. And then over time, that kind of morphed into, a lot of people were still saying to me, you're in really great shape. Like, how are you in such good shape at the age you are and stuff? I'm 52. And I kept telling people how to do, well, if that's what you want to do, here are the steps to do that. And then at a certain point, those things got added into it. And then we got to the end of lockdown. I started training again, and I totally forgot I wrote it. And my girlfriend was like, you should really make that into a book. I had made some other books, like picture books and like biographies of my parents. I helped write those kind of things, and one of myself for my kids. And then I was like, well, this is fun making these little books. I'll just make this book, So yeah, that's where it came from.
Amazing.
And I basically just hired an Amazon team to help me get it all through the editing process and get it up on Amazon and in bookstores all over the place, so that I could sell it.
Brilliant.
Yeah, another pro of jiu-jitsu that I'm not sure that you listed, I think one of the big ones is the social aspect as well. So like you talked about the lockdowns, but Anton and I started this podcast just before they all started, and I think that's been a big thing for us in trying to sort of help connect the community and things like that. So I definitely think there's also that side of jiu-jitsu. Like, you make friends in jiu-jitsu that
and like I was like 42 or something when I started. And when I started, there was no one in the club, including my teacher, who was like anywhere near my age. I mean, I was 10 plus years older than the oldest person there. And the fact that I have been there for whatever, 7 or 8 years, and a guy can walk in now, not going to lie, half the guys my age that want to get into it are because they listen to Rogan's podcast or something like that. And they hear over and over and over again how great it is, and they want to go and try it. And if they had come in 10 years ago instead of last year, my coach wouldn't have been able to point to me and say, that guy's in his 50s. He does it. Come and try it. And when I see those guys on the mat, I'm so happy that somebody did something other than go run a marathon or buy a Porsche or start sailing or play tennis or whatever else it is, play golf, the other stuff that you're supposed to do when you get old, and you want to be sort of have an activity or be fit. I love seeing those people there, seeing those men and women now. In the beginning, it was probably more men, but now that women are having an environment that they can actually come into, that there's people like me at our age that can support them. And I'll go straight up to somebody and say, who are you? How old are you? I'm so glad you're here. Let's roll.
Yeah. Awesome, man. I'm wondering, like, in putting together a book, it's like books occur to me is this very difficult project ultimately, because they're so easy to stop and start, put the project aside for things that are more pressing. So what was that journey from, obviously you wrote this stuff and then your girlfriend said, hey, why don't you make a book? After she said that and the light bulb went off for you, what was the journey like to creating a piece of content that will hopefully ring out through the jiu-jitsu community for the ages? You know, what was the different?
Yeah. Look, I mean, it's funny because you're exactly right. I was an English major. I mean, when you finish college, basically either you're teaching or you're doing technical writing for someone or you're writing something. And I think my dad, especially when I became an English major, he accepted it just fine. But the assumption was that I was going to write a book at some point. And through my whole 20s, 30s, 40s, I mean, obviously I'm not from Australia. I ended up here. I've got quite a long backstory, like origin story, but the process of writing it hard, but it's really just about it's very similar to learning jiu-jitsu. You just have to be consistent at putting your time in. And look, it's not, War and Peace. It's 80 something pages. There's not much, like,
82,
I don't think there's that
82.
much to 82 pages. I don't think there's that much to it. Like I'm like, geez, I hope I don't get found out. It's really more of a pamphlet, like, but it was, once I started looking at it like it was a book, like it was something that I intended to be, this on-ramp. I imagine it as like the light signal at an on-ramp for the freeway. Like there's all these people sitting there that want to join us, and they just kind of are missing a step. If you don't have a friend, I mean, it's incredibly daunting. Even knowing someone really well and having them bring you to practice and introduce you to everybody, at some point they have to start fighting for their life. And that's really, and even after you start for a long period of time, it's very confronting. No one explained to me what I had to do emotionally as a 40 and 50-year-old guy, what I had to do. I mean, I sort of was an athlete. I've been fit my whole life, but I haven't done something like this since high school, because I've just been in an industry my whole working life for 30 years. I was in shape, but I had no time. There was no way I could train. And so some of the book is how to it's really simple things, like how to go through and how to weed through all the gyms around you and figure out what is a jiu-jitsu gym and what just has jiu-jitsu, because there is a difference. There are gyms that were always Taekwondo gyms that now have a jiu-jitsu class, but that's not what we call a jiu-jitsu gym. It's not. I mean, Immersion MMA, where I train in Glen Waverly, it's an MMA gym supposedly, but really there's two things we study there: Muay Thai and jiu-jitsu. So you're a striker or you're a grappler, or you do both and you cross over. It's all cool. But we're not like, I don't want to say watered down, but we focus on just those effective sports. And Absolute is the same way, with the addition of strength, and you guys have a regular ring and stuff like that.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. What you were saying, Eli, reminded me of a clip I saw just recently from Anthony Bourdain, who also started jiu-jitsu. I think he was 58 when he started.
Yeah.
And he said one of the main draw cards for him was that at that point in his life, he loved the chance to be a beginner again, like to learn and to be totally like unaware. Like he compared it to taking it back to when he was an apprentice chef and having to learn those things. So that intellectual side of it is definitely very, very challenging at any age, but especially at an older age.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we get so buried into our identity of who we are as we grow. I'm a father, I'm this guy at work, I do have these friends that I'm this thing for, and I like to go four-wheel driving or whatever it is. That stuff, you start defining yourself by those things outside you. And the great thing about jiu-jitsu is it does define you, but it also is a subtractive activity. So just as a sculptor is starting with a block of stone and reducing to get a sculpture, that's what you're doing in jiu-jitsu. And it's especially apparent when you get somebody that's like 300 pounds and they come in and like 2 or 3 years later, they're a fighting 185 pounds of, like, mean ass old dude or old lady,
So true.
And anyway, there just wasn't a good way that I saw in our universe for people to come from outside very easily. The people who started it when I started it and much earlier were like the equivalent of weeds in the plant world. They were pioneer plants. They grow somewhere where something doesn't really grow that well. Because when you show up for the first time at a gym and you know nobody, now I'm really fortunate. Immersion is an amazing family and very friendly, and we have ties all over Melbourne. We cross train with all the different gyms. But a lot of gyms out in the world are still maybe super traditional, run by a Brazilian black belt, or maybe they're meathead, transformative kind of meathead things where this dude was just an all-around nasty man. So he trained jiu-jitsu in the, late 90s or whatever. And so when he was starting is vastly different from a lot of the sport training and the other stuff that we get into today. So if you don't have the tools to weed out an environment like that, and you end up in one of those places that's kind of toxic, pretty male dominated, not really open to new shit, that might be the end of your jiu-jitsu. You might do one class and go, well, those guys are assholes, and that's really not the sort of sliver of this sport that the people I like and the people that I know you guys are around, that's not who we want to promote and who we want to get in.
Yeah. So is this book for people who have not done jiu-jitsu and are thinking about taking up jiu-jitsu?
It is for them, but it's also for people who have started organically on their own, because I do include a lot of stuff that just will help you just get, if you didn't grow up doing martial arts and you don't have the habits that you need to be able to get to the mat consistently, it's simple stuff. But like if your parents didn't do that great of a job training you on what your hygiene should be like when you're in very close contact with other people, or how to be organized to go and do something tomorrow, like I have to, I'm an adult that's trained for 8 years and I'm passionately involved in the sport. And maybe once a year, I'll forget my belt, or I'll, probably once or twice a month, I'll forget to trim my fingernails before I go. It's not rocket science, so telling people like that they need a pair of toenail clippers and a toothbrush in their bag and a towel. And some, I remember, there was some discussion. This was a couple years after I started, and somebody asked somebody else, what's the one thing you would always have in your bag? And my instructor, Minnie, went on and said, spare underwear. And I had never thought about it until that, until that time. Like it had never crossed my mind. Yes, I always brought a pair of underwear with me, but that also meant only having one pair meant there were definitely days where I went home cowboy, because I wasn't ready. And so, going through stuff like, when people say to me, okay, I'm ready, I'm going to start training like next week, Monday's going to be my first day. I'll go, oh, so you picked a gym? And they'll go, yeah. And I'll go, well, what gym is it? And they'll go, oh, I just like grabbed one off Google. And, sometimes that's a good thing. You can get lucky. But like the basic strategy that I would tell everyone is pick the 3 gyms that are either closest to work or home, because those are the 2 places you spend the most of your time. Yeah. And if you've got gyms that are near each of those and you don't pick one, but you pick one that's an hour away, you're not going to be training very long. You don't want to, there's going to be a day where you go, oh, it's too cold, I'm too tired, I haven't washed my gear or whatever, and you won't go. And then that'll be the end of it. If you're not good at building habits. So from the beginning of the book, I try and get people into making the right choices early and nailing those habits and just sticking with it and just trying to do the same simple thing over and over again. As the little blurb thing says, there's no secret techniques in it. And I have had people who I showed it to say, why? I want some. But the amazing thing about it is it's such it's like a lot of it's a really simple thing to say you're going to do. It's a hard thing to follow through over and over and over and over again. And I know both of you know that there's been times you fall in and out of training, or you get injured and you're just like, what am I doing with my life? Going to be beaten up by 30 people, 4 times a week. Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
So,
it
is for both. Yeah.
Any of the anything for the older grapplers? Obviously, we want people to read your book and look at your book, but can you tell us anything specifically for the over 40s?
Yeah. I mean, like it's, and again, it's like not stuff you couldn't necessarily find anywhere else, but putting it together into more of a system, more of a plan to keep everything together. It's about how much you actually have to hydrate. How much protein do you actually need? What sort of things can I take that will reduce inflammation, or choose anti-inflammatory foods for a diet, that kind of thing. So, and sleep. I mean, like it's stuff that you hear now. Thankfully, you hear it in a lot of places. And I think humanity on the whole is going, oh, what? We need to sleep. We can't stay awake all night and just catch a nap on the train. So specifically for older grapplers, it's get the right rest. Make sure you're well hydrated. Make sure you're looking after your diet. You can't really at this age be messing around with drinking or smoking or staying up late. Or, I mean, like, if you want to watch TV, in my house, there's a penalty for me to watch TV. If I want to watch TV, if I want to wake up, basically I only watch about between 20 minutes and an hour of TV, unless I'm sitting down for a movie. And that's always at 5 a.m. when I'm not training and I have to get on the bike. I have to be on the bike pedaling if I want to watch TV. That's awesome. that's just like a rule that I made. And, the reality is, with just 20 minutes of any kind of cardio a day, like anything from walking to a rowing machine to whatever, that's all you really need. You don't have, if you're practicing a couple times a week and you're doing that the rest of the time and you have decent strength. I mean, obviously there's a lot of people who maybe would come into this a little bit unprepared and they might have to work a little extra on strength and conditioning. But generally speaking, it's very simple stuff for the older grappler that the younger people, they're never going to do. Why would I get up at 5 and get on a bike? I'm going to walk from the train to work. I don't need to do cardio or whatever it is. But that's our advantage as older people. I've got better cardio than probably half the 20-year-olds. Absolutely. And if I have better cardio, that means more oxygen feeds my computer while I make, war decisions, basically. And so I overtake them because they can't breathe. Yeah. I mean, so I would say, that stuff is all simple, all available.
So I remember when I discovered Jiu Jitsu at 35. And I remember, like, I was still drinking quite heavily, probably smoking a fair bit of weed, and whatever else goes with that.
Yep.
So my life didn't work. And what I remember is, like, for that first year, I'd go and sit outside the gym, like, every time. Should I go in? Should I not go in? I'd literally drive to the gym.
Really?
Still debate going into the gym for the first whole year. I was in Queensland. It was very tough. It was a tough gym.
Yeah.
I like, what I'm imagining, right, is if I'd walked into the gym and there at the point of sale at the desk was your book, and somebody had said to me, look, you might be able to kind of fast track a bit of the pain by actually grabbing a copy of this, not the physical pain. Not
having to go home with no underwear.
Yeah. Like, you might be able to, because it was such a stretch. It was such a jump from one life into a completely different life. And, like, I felt like there was no manual. There was no, it's like having children. There's no manual to this thing.
Yeah. That's kind of what I imagined it as. I imagined it as a manual for all these people who keep asking me, oh, well, you do this, you look fit. How can I get into it? And my favorite is now the 20 and 30-year-olds at the gym. They go, oh, I really hope I look like that when I'm 50. And I go, you could look like this now. Yeah. You don't have to wait until you're 50. You should have some good here. Read my book. They're 20.
Absolutely. Yeah.
There's nothing like in this book that only works for 40 and 50-year-olds. It's just that if you're 18 to 38, probably, you're not going to listen.
No,
We're old
no one's
enough
going
to
tell you what
we're
to do.
old enough to know. We're old enough to know that we can get really good advice from people if we look for it. You
Yeah.
know?
Hmm.
So
Yeah, we're
it's
more
advice
coachable.
from
Yeah.
yeah, that's right. And that's one of our other, things that I talk about in the book. That's, if you're not going to be able to let go of the fact that you're not good at this, and you're going to continue to not be good at it for a very long time, it's really going to suck for your ego. If you're that guy, you're not going to be able to do this. You have to be able, and that, for me, that discussion of ego ties in with injury, because for us as older grapplers, the thing that we really, really want to avoid is injury, because that takes us out of the habit. It takes us out of the, and I do talk about, what you can do while you're injured, how you can, address different types of injuries and get back on top, not from a medical, not from a medical professional standpoint. My family was a pretty medically oriented family. My dad was a dentist and went to medical school and stuff. So we did kind of heal ourselves, but just from the standpoint of, being able to avoid injuries. And that includes stuff like not using stimulants like caffeine in them. I find anytime I've used any caffeine, not only do I get rewarded with a massive case of leg and foot cramps from the, dehydrating effects, but I also go way more aggressively than I should be going when it's time to roll. And if I'm doing that, I'm leaving myself much more open to injury. So I talk more about how your game is not the 20-year-old's game. Your game is not the 30 or the maybe even the 40-year-old's game. Like in the last 5 to 6 years, I've gone from a place where I was actively hunting new submissions, and they were things I learned that week, and I wasn't going to rest until I got one. And then I was horribly disappointed if I couldn't put into practice what I learned. Now I'm in a mental space where I know if I get there and I'm on the mat and I'm dressed and I got a full water and I can find one person that I've wrestled with before that I enjoy being with, that is a huge win. And it doesn't matter what happens after that. And that is a headspace that's a really comfortable place to be in. It's a great way to exercise with other people. And at that point, it becomes not about how many notches you racked up, how many racks of antlers you got of young purple belts or blue belts or whatever you can grab, whatever you can rip off anybody. It's moved a little bit beyond the savage. It's still plenty savage. There's more than enough savagery to make me happy. There's plenty of masochism left on the mat, but it's not the point of it. The point of it is it's social for me. I really enjoy that family. I'm an expat in this country. So any friends that I have been through work or, family connections. I'm now divorced. So that whole, I don't even associate with them anymore. So that they're a major, major part of my support group. Those people know more about me than my family does in a lot of cases. They know what happened to me last week and where I'm going next week and why I'm not around for the last month or whatever. They know all about it, and that's what I want everyone to be able to go and get some of. I want the other people our age to not be discouraged by the fact that they walk in and every single person is ripped and 20 and like bloodlust in their eyes kind of thing.
That's a beautiful
I want to be
man.
this kind of like, I want to be kind of like this bit of advice, even if it's just the one thing that I put on top that then they go, okay, I'll try it,
You talk at all in your book about other things like that older grapplers can do on the mats. Like, I don't know if it's because I'm a smaller person, but I know I always advocate for people to choose their partners wisely. Do you talk about that at all?
Absolutely. I absolutely do. And the type of grappler that I recommend as a mat marriage for an older person is actually a woman. I think that the upper belt women that we have in our sport are the most fantastic training partners you could possibly find. And I actually say in the book, if you manage to get the attention of one of these people and they're willing to work with you, just realize that you actually you scored one of the best gems in our sport. Because for a small person like that who has come through all the ranks, to give you the time as a clumsy, huge person that could possibly injure them is massive. So if you can engender trust in a person like that and have them as a training partner, guaranteed they're not going to injure you, because their skill level is so high and they're usually typically much lighter than you. So if you can be careful enough to roll and drill with a person like that, you will accelerate your learning like 4 times. I would say 4x probably.
Brilliant. Wow.
Because of my work schedule and stuff, I really wasn't fortunate enough at white belt to have one consistent training partner. But during that time, as you know, my coach Minnie, he's a smaller person, so his jiu-jitsu has always been optimized for smaller people, you know, and even as quite a strong person, as an older person, I'm weaker than someone much younger than me with the same amount of sort of mass. So I always look for, I love training with cops are awesome people to train with, firefighters, paramedics, because those people all understand how much they can put their body at and still be able to go and work. But the absolute best training partner, I reckon, is an upper belt woman. And even especially a small one. Like,
made Kim's day.
That's me.
that means free. I'm working on free private.
We've got 3 minutes 52 left, but what is occurring to me most out of this conversation is you are actually making jiu-jitsu more available to more people. You know, that's what I'm loving. This is the message that I'm taking away. Is there something else that you would add to that within the 3.5 minutes that we've got left to really make sure that people get what this is and why this is and what you're and what you want from them?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. Like for me, when I realized that I might never see jiu-jitsu again, I guess this started as a love letter, really, to the sport. And it was a way for me to be connected. And then I realized as it developed, it was a way for anybody to be connected. And and then I thought, you know, I went through this whole sort of wrestling with myself, like, you're just a blue belt. You know, like, what the hell what do you know? Because I consider that to be the actual beginning. The white belt is not really the beginning. You get a free belt when you buy a gi. So anybody could have a white belt. You know, like the blue belt is the first belt you're ever given, the first belt you ever earned. It's the first real belt, in my opinion. And so I always struggled with, well, you're not really an expert, but I am. I mean, I've managed at this age to hang in there and keep going with people who are, you know, I watch people shoot past me all the time. There's a purple belt at our club that when my kids were in jiu-jitsu, I helped teach kids class, and he was in it. And he shot straight past me, and there's no way. I can't even be close to him. So yeah, for me, it was about making it more available to more people. And I found that, like, when I went fully through the thought process, that was my contribution that I would be able to make, was to maybe I make it available to, you know, people who become ultimately much better at jiu-jitsu than I am. That's the point of a teacher. You know, you're supposed to elevate people above you. So.
Amazing.
Awesome. I think that's a really nice place to end it, if that's okay. Thank you so much, Eli, for joining us. We'll put the link to your book in our podcast episode, which will be out in a couple of weeks. So
yeah, cool.
We're all about spreading love in the community and helping all community members, but especially those over 40, as Anton and I are. So we love to help the masters.
Yeah.
Thank you so much once again.
Thanks,
for
Eli.
taking the time and for writing that book. That's amazing stuff. So thank you, Eli.
Thanks for having me on, guys. I really appreciate having the outlet. The book's on Amazon. There's also a Facebook group, Old Guy Jiu Jitsu. There are 2 Old Guy Jiu Jitsu Facebook groups. So it's not the one that hasn't seen any activity since 2017.
Cool.
It's the
We'll
one
put
that's
we'll put an actual link to your one and the
yeah,
book
perfect.
when we do the publishing. But I also recommend all gym
Awesome.
owners get in touch with Eli, create a connection with him, and promote his book, because you know he's only actually got one review on Amazon. Like, this is early days. Let's help him get this out there, because it is a service to the community as much as anything else, and it's a self-expression. And we just want to foster this. We need more. We need much more like this. All right, guys, take care. Much
Thank
love.
you.
Cheers. Bye.
Thank you so much. See you guys.
Thank you. Bye.